Hello everyone. So here is another episode of Beyond Replication, I believe first one for 2026. A little bit delayed. We were going to talk about our thoughts on 2026, but as we are almost in the month of February, we're gonna save that for the beginning of the horse year, which will be on February 17th. So stay tuned for that. And in this one, we are going to be talking about the current astrology and some interesting anomalies Aaron and I notice with regards to astrology. So we want to kind of bring it to everybody's attention just in case you haven't noticed. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So obviously the energy is packed. There's a lot of things happening in the world. There's a lot of tension rising within us. It's good to be able to figure out how to get that tension out in a way so that you're not drawn or driven to consume more of the stories, the narratives. And for a lot of us, we have no options. It's right in our back door. It's right in our face. So it's important to ground ourselves and realize that the future is now. You got to be present with yourself in order to get there. Otherwise, you're going to be pulled through the wake of whatever narratives are drawing your attention. So, along with what Mila was saying about the energies and the patterns that we've been noticing, we'd like to speak on some of the transformation happening here in relation to Mercury, for one, and Mars, and obviously Mars in its partnership with Venus. And so we want to talk about Mars and Mercury and what we've been seeing here in the charts and feeling within ourselves, seeing in the world. And it's all happening in relation to these transpersonal planets, the outer planets, Neptune, Uranus, Pluto. And these are big transformative energies. They're large cycle statics which fade into new expressions over time. Some of us are more tuned to those outer planets than others, naturally, but we're all experiencing them collectively as the world goes through transformation, as our culture, our society changes, as our technology grows. So this is what we want to speak on today.
Yeah, especially as Neptune is just about to move back into sign of Aries. Tomorrow, Monday, we are recording this on Sunday, the 25th. And Moon just now moved into sign of Taurus, so we're trying to ground the energy because I was saying to Aaron that there's so much going on astrologically that I just don't have the capacity to remember all the aspects, all the transits, all the days. It's just too much. We are literally bombarded by information right now, everywhere, as you might have noticed with the state of the world. So yeah, Neptune is just about to move back into sign of Aries tomorrow, and it's there to stay until 2038, right? 2038, I believe, was the chart which is Neptune ingressing into the sign of Taurus on the zero analytic degree of Taurus. So interesting. Again, we're talking about astrology with Moon in sign of Taurus today. And all these interesting anomalies that we want to mention with regards to Mercury, Mars, and also Venus to a certain extent, conjunction we are looking at. All of these personal planets are connected to these interpersonal or evolutionary planets. As already mentioned, Neptune moving to sign of Aries will be ruled by Mars until 2038. And then we'll have Saturn moving into the sign of Aries next month on the 13th, 14th, depending where you are in the world, having a conjunction with Neptune on the 20th, on the analytic 0 degrees of Aries. So both of those will be ruled by Mars. Of course, Saturn's orbit is much shorter, so only for another 2.5 years or so. And then we'll have Uranus moving back into the sign of Gemini in April 25th, 26th, depend again where you are. And this will be the Mercury ruled in Gemini. So Mercury will be the ruler of Uranus for the upcoming 7-8 years. So this is where we'll have all the personal planets very strongly connected to the evolutionary interpersonal planets, also with Uranus being the rule of Pluto. So that takes us back to the reason why we're here, what are we evolving into. And let's not forget Venus. Venus is going to become the ruler of Chiron, moving into the sign of Taurus in, I think it's June or July. And Chiron is the key between Saturn and Uranus. So between the form that is currently manifested as a result of the past thought, choices, desires, and the breaking of that form to create something new, something different, going beyond the pattern. So this is where we can see everybody is connected to everybody else, and together in this beautiful dance of cosmic orchestra and symphony, they're creating these new expressions.
Yeah. And speaking of the Chiron energy, so it's like a freak factor with Uranus. It's outside the pale, outside the norm. It's a future orientation here now, but it's usually more prominent in outsiders or people who are mad geniuses or are thinking outside the box, are very future oriented. And the wounding that a lot of us feel, especially as children, is we just don't belong. We don't fit in, and there are experiences which are handed down through our elders and through our peers, which we embody. And this kind of is a dance around the polis, the pole star, the thing which brings us together. So we're weaving our stories, we're weaving the legacy together, not just the good, but the bad. And this freak factor is our sense of not belonging, and this wound within us. It's about how do we honor ourselves in the process and everyone else. We can see the patterns unfolding, which is further wounding and choices from wounding. They say 2 wrongs don't make a right, but it's not about a static placeholder as a destination in life. It's not about the destination, it's the journey. It's about your realization in real time, offering you a sovereignty and a sense of self and your own value. You can go along to get along, or you can be within yourself and bring that forward and go to where the truth actually is, and that's in the unknown. When you're following the herd, when you're going along to get along, dancing around the pole star, you're doing what is, it's like a trauma loop echo response, trying to figure out who you are in relation to this world, and doing that with the dynamics of other people. So with Venus being the ruler of Chiron upcoming, and helping with this transformation of Mars through Mercury by understanding who are you, what's your value, and what have you compromised as a truth for an authority outside yourself, so that not only you but others could learn in the process. And we're seeing the stories of the past, this Wotanic energy, this need to preserve, protect the borders, the culture, the blood, the history, the legacy of what has been. And when we're going through changes, it's not easy. It's like working out. You're tearing your body apart so that it may grow back together new, stronger, more resilient, with a memory of, okay, I can overcome this. I've felt the bottom, now let's climb to the top type of thing. So we're moving through this psychic transformation, and we do it individually and collectively. So how do we honor ourselves in the process? And what is it all for? What could it be for? That's what we hope to kind of question, because the answers are always growing, just like the questions.
Yeah, and I feel like these anomalies, which we pointed out and we're going to talk about, even though we didn't say what they were yet. I think these are really helping us with the process. So what we're talking about is Mars-Mercury conjunction, which I don't know if anybody noticed, but we just about to experience the third one out of 5 in the last few months, as of October, when they had the first one in the sign of Scorpio, then they had another one in November in a sign of Sagittarius. Now they have in one, where are they now? In Aquarius, right? Aquarius.
Yeah, had one in,
Aquarius, and
2
then
days ago.
No, 29th. What day is today? Yeah, so it's gonna be in 4 days. And then we're going to be having another one in Pisces, and the final one will be in the sign of Aries. So this is not very common, where we have Mars and Mercury these are the Mars and Mercury. Okay. So so they were on the 18th. So what is on the 29th? Is the Venus one?
Let's see.
Yeah, it's the Venus Mercury conjunction. Yeah, my apologies. So that's the one that's happening on the 29th. So we have multiple conjunctions between these personal planets. As already mentioned, Mercury and Mars, they are conjuncting 5 times, and same is happening for Mercury and Venus. So they already had, I believe, 2 conjunctions last year. Now it's 1, and then it's another 2. So within a year span, which is not usual, I don't believe, especially for Mars. Mars and Mercury, well, for Mars and Mercury, it's actually 6 months between October and I believe April is the last one. So they're having 5 conjunctions in all these different signs: Scorpio, Sagittarius, Aquarius, Pisces, and the final one will be in the sign of Aries. And the final one between Mercury and Venus will not be until October this year, because we're already in 2026, right? And that one will be in the sign of Scorpio. So we have all these multitudes of conjunctions which we perceive as rebirth. Something is ending, something new is beginning, and the common factor here is the Mercury, which is how we perceive reality. Mercury as the upcoming ruler of Uranus, which is the ruler of Pluto until 2043, 2044. So this is how the prediction and the prophecies about splitting of consciousness, splitting of humanity, splitting of Earth, this is where it's becoming real, with all these conjunctions between Mercury and personal planets, which is going to impact Uranus, which is going to by proxy impact Pluto. This is how the consciousness is desiring to expand through new ways of perceiving reality, through cultivation of new language, which is unique to you, your own expression that is based on who are you, what do you value, what do you want to bring into lived experience, lived ways of being. So it's no longer just a theory, just a thought in the mind, but it's something that is actually experienced through the senses, through this lived life. So that's what I feel with all of these conjunctions that are happening. There are opportunities to reevaluate all these different areas of our lives. Like we said, that Mars and Mercury started in Scorpio, and that's where Mercury and Venus going to end in Scorpio in October this year. So they started in October last year, and then Venus is going to end it with Mercury in October this year. And like you said, it's going to be on the same degree.
Yeah, 8 degree. Yeah, so Venus and Mercury had a conjunction at 8 degrees Aries in 2024. Forget the date. April 11th, I believe. And now they're having another one in November at the same degree, or at 8 degrees of Scorpio, which is a transformation. But in April, on the 20th of April, 420, we'll have Mars and Mercury making another conjunction at that 8 degrees.
Aries.
Mars, yeah, in Aries. So it's very interesting here. Let me bring the chart up so we can look at what we're talking about here.
There's just so many charts because we're talking about 10 separate conjunctions between Mercury and Mars and Mercury and Venus. And as Aaron mentioned, 3 of those are happening on this 8 degree. And between the Aries and the Scorpio, so the conjunction that will be happening between Mercury and Mars last, which is, I think, April, coming up April, the one in Aries, and the final one between Mercury, April 20th. So that's right before we have Uranus moving back into the sign of Gemini. Of course, Sun is on the 0 degree, so there's the beginning of the Taurus season. So this is the final conjunction between Mercury and Mars, which will be on the 8 degree of Aries, and that's where Venus and Mercury started a year ago in March, I think it was, on whenever it was, when they had the first conjunction. And that was also in Aries. And like, now Mars and Mercury are going to finish in Aries, and then Mercury and Mars started in Scorpio, and Venus and Mercury are going to finish in Scorpio, also the 8 degrees, and that will be coming up October 2026. So it's interesting when we pay attention to the archetypes and the numbers, because 8, the number associated with Scorpio, which is the number of transformation, and also the Aries to Scorpio is the in conjunction, which is also about the death and rebirth, the transformation, transmutation, becoming something completely different. And again, we're talking about planets that are connected as of, well, tomorrow, for Mars to Neptune, connected with these evolutionary planets. Neptune as the source desire, source, the meaning of anything, the absolute, right? And then Mars is how Pluto acts consciously in connection with Mercury to Uranus, connection to Pluto. So here is how the whole shebang is becoming very complex, because suddenly everything is an option. With the Neptune in Aries, the desire can be anything you want. It's a new journey. It's a new cycle beginning. And then with Uranus in Gemini, it literally is the multi-dimensional options of all that is.
Yes. Yeah, you could think of this whole, we've got Mars and Venus, obviously, passion in the, how do you consciously wield the passion with compassion, or how do you temper your compassion with passion? That's how I view this Venus-Mars energy. In Mercury, obviously, it's the mind. It's how the message of the gods. How do you read the language of life? What's the symbology? Are you limited to the books, to the atomistic perspectives, to the teachings, to the science, to the religion, to your peers, your culture? So Uranus, the higher expression or the higher octave of Mercury, being that Promethean energy, and we're bound to these truths of the past, the mountain of the past. And in the mythology, Prometheus, he is set free by Hercules or Heracles. And that's your passion. You don't have the drive, the will to break the chains. You need the fire. You need the reason, the desire to do that. And that's what I feel is happening through Venus and Mars with Mercury. And as Uranus goes back into Gemini, ruled by Mercury, that's when the reasons for this passion are going to rise. We're seeing it in the world already, the seeds of the authoritarian complexes coming, to pull us all around one united reason. And it's all these little chaotic things happening in different areas of the world. And we're going to find meanings and reasons to get us all together. And you can look at it through society, through technology, through technocracy, through CBDCs or the economic front, how we're going to be dropping fiat, paper, mineral currencies for this digital idea, and how the value of what it is to be alive is going to be our consciousness, where our attention is. It is about the consumer is now time, or it's us, but the money, the actual value of it is time. It's where is our attention flowing, because where your attention goes, energy flows, and that's your life force. So how are we going to balance that out? We're going to see Venus ingress into Gemini a few days before Uranus does. And we have the sun here at 0 degrees at this last conjunction between Mercury and Mars of 2026. And this is going to culminate with the Venus conjunction with Mercury at 8 degrees of Scorpio. And
Right, yeah, in October.
let me pull that up real quick.
I believe it's right before the Libra new moon, we said.
Yeah, October 6th, 2026. 8 degrees, 13 minutes. The sun will be at, 13 degrees, and we'll be having a new moon in Libra.
On the 10th, yeah.
Okay, a few days later. And in this energy, you could see right here, there's an opposition between Saturn and the Sun, Pallas, Athena, and the Sun. You see there's the action between the outer planets, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus. Here, all this energy that's in this large cycle creation, closing out the old, bringing in the new. So how do you bring this new spirit into form? What is your updated sense of your own value in this show, this movie, this drama we call life? And how do you apply that towards living? Rather than replicating, how do you get into the creative? And you can see there's a working transformation, an unconscious happening between Uranus and this Mercury-Venus conjunction. So Venus just coming out of a working transformative aspect with Uranus, bringing that awareness to Mercury and squaring, just coming out of the square with Pluto and coming onto a working transformative quincunx with Saturn. So Saturn will be informing us of our rebirth in this time, an updated sense of self from the depths of our own experiences.
Well, and I mean, we had the Mars on the 5 degrees, which is the degree of Leo. The creation is also the chaos agent, which forces us to create in a perfect sextile with Uranus, the first sextile, which is the foundational, the Taurus. And of course, when we look at the Saturn opposition, and Mars is the ruler of Saturn on this 11th degree of Aries, plus there is that closing conjunction between South Node and Moon. Obviously, at the time, South Node will already be in the sign of Leo, with Jupiter over there it's technically a stellium. And going back to this Mars being the ruler of Saturn in opposition with the Sun, to me, what this represents straight away is that your value, like Saturn, you learning to become the creator, Mars in Leo, through chaos and things falling apart or unexpected situation happening. Of course, that's also the Uranus sextile. From the experience of us being currently in a human body, it might not be pleasant, it might not be desired, because Uranus brings unexpected things which we have to react to quickly. We don't necessarily have time to think about it and stuff. So with the Mars being on these 5 degrees in a perfect sextile in Uranus, being the Taurian sextile, being the ruler of Saturn in opposition with the Sun right before the new moon in Libra, so we can see the moon is coming towards the Sun, so it's closing, is that closing balsamic sextile, right, which is Aquarius. What we liberate in ourselves from is pretty much the story of Venus being the ruler of South Node in the sign of Libra throughout, I believe it was 2023, 2024, right? Because prior to that, Venus was the ruler of
the North Node.
Venus was the ruler of the North Node in Taurus. So we were learning in the after effects of COVID, like, what do I need? What do I desire? Where what I need is maybe not available, or how can I get my needs met? Then when we had the nodes in Aries Libra, we started to realize that, maybe my reality differs from yours. Maybe what you need is different from mine. Now we had these nodes in Virgo Pisces, which will shift, of course, in July when they're going to move into Aquarius Leo. So we we learning from the experience. South Node in Virgo, ruled by Mercury, upcoming ruler of Gemini, Uranus. So we have the opportunity to learn from the past, look at this is all that's in manifested form that already happened on this planet. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but is that in alignment with who I want to be, where am I going, who I'm becoming, which might be opposed by this Libra, by the culture, by the systems, by the, by other people, people that could be even close to you, your family, your friends, your loved one, doesn't matter, because we're learning to individuate, right? With the sextile between Uranus and Mars being in this Leo, which is the creation, Leo, the rebirth of the innocence, the child within, like who I were before I became what this environment that I grown up in wanted me to be, or the result of the trauma, or the result of past belief system, or whatever it was. And of course, with Jupiter being in the sign of Leo by that stage already, entering the 3rd decan, which is of course the Aries decan connected to Mars, this is about expansion of, because currently as we're recording this, Jupiter is still retrograde in Cancer, expansion of the sense of self that is self-created. Mars in the sign of Mars being the ruler of Saturn in the sign of Leo is self-created. like, yes, nature or nurture, but now we are coming into the time in human history where it doesn't matter where you were born. It doesn't matter who you were born to. It doesn't matter what your ancestors believed was the one and only way. It doesn't matter. Like, literally, we are, especially this year in the year number 10, which is, simplified as 1, but it has the secret 0 there. We are in a year of a reset where you can create a foundation for becoming whoever you want to be. But you have to take a responsibility to create that. So it's your creation. It's no longer a replication of or continuation of something or someone that I can then point the finger at the external authority and say, oh yeah, that's your fault. So with the Saturn being in Aries and Neptune being in Aries, this is of course post conjunction, which is happening next month in February. There is a brand new cycle beginning between the two. All that is Neptune and Saturn, the manifested form, that is, is an opportunity for all of us individually and collectively to create something new. But what we will create depends on the choice. And what the choice is depends on how well you know thyself, right? Which is why we have this Mercury multiple conjunctions with both Venus and Mars. Mars, how Pluto acts consciously, what gives you the drive to get out of the bed in the morning, the fire, the desire, the passion. And Venus, the relational dynamics towards existence, towards yourself, towards another, and all that is that you are in relation with. So this is a very complex year in a sense, because there's so much going on, so much activity, and with all of these planets changing signs. Of course, Chiron, we can see at this stage, will be back in a sign of Aries for the final time on the analytic 29 degrees. So again, connected to this Mars on 5, it's saying that, well, we are still in this year of back and forth. Yeah. For Chiron, I mean, everybody else is still, currently still in that back, but going forth, by the end of April, Uranus will be back in Gemini, and then we have the Chiron ingress into Taurus, but then going back into Aries. So this is still kind of like year where we have some of the residue of the past showing up, which we still burn in, the after effects of the snake year, then going to be completely burned to the core with the horse taking over in February, the fire horse. So we have a lot of shifting energy. That is the bottom line. There's a lot of shifting energy. And with regards to the 5 energy in that chaos, like in a sense, for one, it makes you be present. Because when things are happening that are out of routine, out of something that is expected or prediction, suddenly we pay attention, like, yeah, what just happened? What? We wake up from our hamster wheel, right? From our sleep state. So doesn't get lost on me that Mars there is on the 5 degree and 9 minutes, perfect, the culmination. So yeah, from this situations that we are encountering and will continue to be encountering throughout this year and going forward, we have to, we are forced to be present, to pay attention to what is really going on, what's really going on in my head, in my body, in my emotion, and is this something I want to continue to replicate? And if not, then I am the only person who can change it, because nobody else is in control of my thoughts and emotion, even though that is questionable these days. But, this is what we are trying to get back to. The core of I am the authority of my own reality, which I'm perceiving through my senses. So, so I feel that a lot of that is playing out in all of these charts and kind of navigating us forward into this new way of experiencing life on this planet.
Yeah. Yes, like you said, I mean, you said it very well. Change is happening, Pluto and Aquarius. And as change happens, we can't control everything. We can only control our response to what that is, and that's about that authenticity. Imagine every choice you make is based off of how well you know yourself. And if you are the fool, knowing you're ignorant of all that there is or all there ever could be, but you're open to learning and you're figuring out who you are in relation to the contrast, then your choices are going to be correct 99 times out of 100, even though it may not seem like it in real time. So we are learning the power of authenticity in relation to the shit show, in relation to other people. And it's about how do we respond to this? There are a lot of things. If you imagine time, for instance, currently we have Jupiter in the sign of Cancer, and we can see Jupiter in the sign of Leo in that previous chart we just looked at, where Venus and Mercury are. In Cancer, if you consider time, or the wheel here, Cancer is the 12th house to Leo. So it's about the awareness of this unconscious emotional flow, the river of our life, of our emotional awareness flowing into the passion, into the purity of the light. What is it for? What could it be for? So we're becoming more aware of what that is through all these hermetic processes. We can call them socioeconomic or political, or just life in general. We're seeing the religious energy transform into a monoculture that's not just religious, not just about economics, but about power, about expression. It's the purity of the past reaching a peak of a replicated perfection. And in that perfection, it's asking you to sacrifice your truth, your vision, your heart, in order for it to become. And this is where the revolution rises within us. Is this in alignment with me and a tomorrow that I would like to be in, when I want to share with my children, or my friends, my family's children, or the future in general? If not, then we step back and say, okay, how do I create the future that I want to be a part of? And this is what this Mercury coming into awareness of passion and compromise is about. And Jupiter, of course, being in the sign of Cancer, and Capricorn being that balance to Cancer, the systems, the hierarchy, the structures of the past. We're seeing the break of that and the spirit of the newness coming in. And every time a cycle ends, a new one is emerging. And the tension is always happening, and it puts you to form, or you put yourself into form. And that's what Saturn's always giving the opportunity for. You can work. When you work externally, it feels like work. When you work internally, it can feel like death. And a lot of times we need the contrast of reality to show us what that process is. And we can share in what's happening in the world, but we know deep down that everyone's going through this transformation of their own emotional sense of self. We're seeing the things we don't want, and we're being asked to grab hold of and rise up and take things we do want. And for us, it's about, how pure am I? How am I living? Is this the life I want to live? Is this authentic for me? Is it authentic for how I want to be in reality? That's the key, I feel. That's the key between Chiron, Saturn, and Uranus. It's about learning your authenticity, and you need to acknowledge your ignorance and your mistakes in order to get to that part. So,
yeah, I'm just looking at that Uranus Lilith opposition that just happened during the time of this most recent Mercury Mars conjunction, which is in this chart, which was a week ago, because the final chart we looked at, the one for October, where everybody is in Aries and Chiron is back in Aries and stuff. Lilith was at the yod, at the precipice of the yod, so she was in conjunction with Uranus and Mars, having that sextile. So to me that's interesting, because like you were saying about the external feels like work and the internal feels like death. So here we have the Lilith in Scorpio. This is a week ago. Lilith in Scorpio on a 28 degree. Obviously, that's number 10. We are in the year number 10. We have the Uranus on 27, the year number 9, which we just came out of. And this is the opposition. Uranus is now on this Taurus 27 degrees. Obviously, Uranus soon will station direct on 27 at the beginning of February. I think it's February 2nd or 3rd. So Uranus from 2018 was in the sign of Taurus, and by this stage, when it's almost done with it, we have a very different perception of value. What holds the value? My value as a person, right? Taurus. And then we have it in opposition with this Lilith, right, with this Scorpio. So currently we're still in the final weeks of the wood snake year, lunar year of the wood snake. So that's Scorpio for us. And Lilith, which is the shadow of our psyche, the shadow of who we think we are, the aspects of ourselves that we rejected, the fragmentation that we rejected because that was not allowed to be like this, to be like that. My immediate environment rejected it, so I had to reject it in myself. So here we got the opposition, right? The Uranus is saying that, well, this foundation your reality is built upon is technically gone. It's going to shit pretty much. So with the 27 degrees. So it's saying that, okay, well, in order to create a new foundation, you have to have a good look, look at everything. With this Scorpio, you have to dig really deep, look at the shadow, look at the things you don't want to see. Because guess why? Because, by the time that we get to October, when we have the final Venus Mercury conjunction in the sign of Scorpio, funny that, there will be an inconjunction from Uranus and this Mars, right? Mars that will be in Leo on that October 6th that we just looked at or something like that. So they will be in conjunction to Lilith and she will be in Capricorn. Right? Isn't that interesting? Because Capricorn is, of course, the structure of reality, ruled by Saturn, all of that. So we have to start from inside out because we look at the world and we say, oh my God, this person is so corrupted, this politics, this, all this shit that's going on out there. And, how can I be happy, all that, if there is so much craziness going on in the world, right? Many of us are overwhelmed. Because they're looking at the state of the world and where is this going, my God, how can I stop it? I can't control it and all the rest of it. So it makes us, it does two things. It gives you an opportunity to feel distracted. So you don't have to deal with your own thing that you feel inside of yourself and blame something else that I feel this way because this is what's going on, right? Whereas actually, as we know with regards to triggers, they never really are in a response to what's going on right now. The situation right now is triggering something that happened a long time ago. In many cases, not maybe even to you or in this lifetime. It's something that we embody, Taurus, that lives in our somatic body, in our physical body, emotional body, mental body, right? So with this opposition that I'm looking at over here, it's saying that, okay, yeah, there is a lot of shit going on out there that's telling you this world that, we are observing is an illusion. It's gone, right? It's gone. Since 2018, you had the opportunity to explore and discover just how vulnerable this world is, how easy it is to press the button and things go down, whether that's internet, whether that's your credit card, whether it's whatever it is, you are not in charge, don't be mistaken. However, there are things, just like Aaron said, you have a control of, which is how do I respond to this world? Where do I want to focus my energy? What do I want to use my life force for, right? So now with all this craziness that's going on, the disruption, and you can say, well, easy for you to say, if you're not in the middle of it, it doesn't affect me personally, or whatever. But still, there is a choice. Like if there are things going on that I can't control, how much of my energy do I want to give to these situation, circumstances? So the Uranus opposing Lilith is giving us the opportunity to look into ourselves in these final weeks of the snake and go, why am I feeling so triggered? What it is that is really feeling threatened in me for my survival, in my existence. And yes, this person or this, government or whatever has a lot of power, but they still don't have an impact if I don't give them. They cannot control how I feel unless I give it the control. So by the time we get to October, when everybody is in their new position, but Chiron just moved back into the sign of Aries, and the inconjunction will be pointing, the Yod will be pointing from Uranus to Mars to this Lilith at the time in Capricorn, which, we had Lilith moving between Sagittarius and Scorpio for a year now. I don't even know if she entered Capricorn. So anyway, it will be in Capricorn by then. So then it will be okay, well, when we are ready to face the shadow within ourselves and accept it and go yes, now I understand why I feel triggered by this behavior, by this situation, by this politician, because it reminds me of something that made me feel disempowered. long time ago, whether this lifetime, my ancestor lineage, past life, doesn't matter. So then by the time we get to October Libra season, prior to this Libra new moon, which will be happening on October 10th, I'll be able to face it differently, because now I know that you out there, Mr. Politician, you just offer a mirror for me to see myself and see where my power lies, and or where I have externalized my power, which is what we've been focused on and working through South Node in Libra these past 2 years, 3 years ago, right? So we can see how all of these things are just coming in cycles, right? They're just building up layers, because would I have been facing what I'm facing right now 3 years ago, I wouldn't have the bandwidth to deal with it. I wouldn't have the bandwidth to deal with it. But now, through this layering of these aspects, these planets, these crescendos and conjunctions, and all these aspects that are going on in the sky, from lunation to lunation, we are building up the resiliency. We are building up the understanding of who am I in relation to you, and who are you in relation to me, and what is my choice with regards to this relational dynamic, which is that Uranus moving into Gemini. So that's something that just popped up for me with regards to this Lilith Uranus, and then go in October it will be the Uranus sextile to Mars, both making an inconjunction to Lilith. That once I know myself, then I perceive this world around me very differently. And when I accept the shadows within myself, then I can look at your shadow and I understand. Mm-hmm. I understand, because everybody is made of light and dark. Nobody's spared. There is not a single person on this planet just pure light or just pure darkness, because the yin and yang has both. Right, so we're just trying to find a balance, which is interesting that the Yod is happening in Libra season. We're trying to find a balance, and at the moment, the way we're trying to get to the balance is through experiencing the extreme imbalance, which is what's going on right now.
Yeah, amazingly well said. Yeah, so and this is true Lilith. I got set up right here, in case you're wondering, and. Consider reality or existence, your conception, your ability to conceive of anything in this world as layers, multivalent layers, okay? And the higher up you go, or someone that's in politics or in power, they cast a dark shadow when they get up there, because they're between us and the purity of a reason beyond what we can conceive. So that person, entity, energy, movement up there is casting shadows. Now we have to contend with the shadows. The shadows are, we can't see what's in front of us. We can only see the darkness of what appears to be a self-fulfilling prophecy or a historic cycle coming around again. But when you go within and you become your own light, which is bringing online those repressions, the anima, the animus, everything that is taboo, expelled from society, exile, when you can find that within yourself, your language expands, your ability to compassionate other people and their experiences becomes a real thing. And when you're limited to language and beliefs of the past, that's why all this stuff happens, to show you are not that. This it's a good mythology to hold, that there's real meaning in it, but it's a mythology. It's out of space and time. It's an anecdotal truth. And we ourselves, we give the power to what that is. And it's not just limited to what we can conceive, but what we can imagine into being. But you have to become what that is. You have to find the value of yourself to know that that's an actual option. And we need contrast in order to feel that, to know that sometimes. And that's what this world gives us. That's what these narratives are giving us. And I just pulled up the chart for March 15th, 2026, where we have Mercury, Mars.
Fourth.
Yeah, the fourth conjunction between the two in a new phase to the North Node at 8 degrees of Pisces. And this is trining that initial Mercury-Mars conjunction in Scorpio that was in October 20th, I believe. So, this is a coming into an awareness that Think of the ineffable, it's beyond reason, beyond words. With Pisces, it's the spiritual, it's not quite solid. It's the closest you can feel to something beyond the ineffable or right before the ineffable. And Aquarius is the closest you can come to conceiving what that is. And whether you're beyond the pale in a mystic fashion where you're feeling all this energy that has no name, and you're creating a language of consciousness for yourself, or you're bringing in the form through the Aquarian model where you can begin to create a communal language other people can relate with. This is part of our growing awareness. This is part of this value shift. The value of our own individual authenticity becomes a united consciousness. So diversity becomes unity. And so we can see the stories of the past, okay? We've got all these people from other countries, these refugees, they're coming in, they're taking advantage of our systems, and they're creating this imbalance in the purity and the harmony of our societies and this and that. But who do you think orchestrated that? It's not just your government. It's not just the banks. It's part of a huge cycle, a season of psyche. And where you are in the layers of this psyche is what role you become. You can be a hero, a tyrant, a victim, a martyr, a savior at any layer of the onion. You can go up to the political sphere and be possessed by that energy, or you can be down low and become possessed by that energy. You have to separate what's truth within you, what is actually here as a static and what's in tune with a living language of life, a dynamic flow. And that's what I feel we're learning in these times. That's what I feel the whole Aquarian model is. It's to get in touch with the purity of the cultivation of the fire of human heritage, to be alive, to be creative, to be in a flow regardless of the contrasting nature of reality. You may not be able to fly, okay? Maybe that's a rule, a law of reality, but you can dream it. You can create other things that elicit that spirit, that same sense in creation at a mundane level. It doesn't have to be a communal agreement between yourself and other people. It doesn't have to be limited to the language of the lowest common denominator. We're here to break free of old patterns and create a new sense of consciousness on Earth. And that starts within the individual, and it spreads as we can see it's happening now. And it's also a reason we see the emergence of technology such as AI and different wonder technologies, which will be coming out this year, which baffle our mind and make us question, how have we not heard of this before? Where was it last year? How come? It's kind of like if you look at airline tickets, a return trip is more expensive than a one-way. It makes, yeah.
One way is more expensive
Yeah, one
than if
way.
you buy a return.
So it's like, where's the logic in that with all the reasons as to saving gas and saving
CO2?
Yeah, and it's like the world is in this flux where right is wrong and wrong is right, and you have to choose the left-hand path from within yourself. Otherwise, you get pulled into the assuative thoughts of the past, the wake of something else.
Yeah, and I'm again looking at the in conjunction over there, the exact in conjunction between Moon in Aquarius and the South Node in Gemini. Mercury ruled, of course, this is the Mercury-Mars conjunction number 4 in less than 6 months. And here we have it on the 10 degrees, which technically is taking it already into the second decan of Pisces, which is the Cancer. And this is actually right after Jupiter station direct. So Jupiter station in direct on March 10th, which is a week after the second eclipse. So we start in the eclipse season next month in February, starting with the new moon solar eclipse in Aquarius, which is happening alongside with the beginning of the fire horse year, and then we'll have the lunar eclipse in Virgo on March 3rd, 3-3 portal. So 1 week later, on the 10th, Jupiter will station direct in Cancer. So we'll have this currently in this chart, March 15th, which is the fourth conjunction between Mars and Mercury in Pisces. We have Moon in exact in conjunction with the South Node, Mercury ruled in Pisces. So it's saying, just like Aaron just said, we have to go beyond the patterns. This Moon is in a new phase conjunction with Pluto, which is happening every month because Moon go through the entire chart in 28.5 days. So here we go. The in conjunction, which is saying that you can't really see yourself the way, or you can't see the past, because Moon is the memories, is the past, is the ancestor line, is the heritage of humanity. So we have technically, what is that? Well, it is obviously not an in conjunction because Jupiter is too far from the 8-degree point. But there was a trine somewhere there. I just seen. Oh yeah, the trine is between the Mercury-Mars conjunction, Pallas, and the Jupiter over there in Cancer. So we, throughout this Jupiter retrograde, which started on 11/11 portal and ends on March 10th, 2026, we were in a sense dissolving the old sense of self. So it's kind of like we were decomposing the old ego. We are still in the process now as we're recording this. We are decomposing the old sense of ego identity that is connected to all these labels. Where am I from, my culture, my religious orientation, sexual orientation, whatever. All these labels, they create the you that you will represent right here, right now, which is the role that you play in this avatar, right? But it's not who you are. It is not your soul. This is just an expression of your soul through these choices that we made, based on pre-birth and throughout the life. So now with this Mars, Pluto, Moon conjunction, and Moon being exactly in conjunction with the South Node, which is where we've been, and Mercury is the ruler making his fourth conjunction to Mars in the sign of Pisces, which is the end, right? And Neptune here already is in Aries, Saturn in a new phase conjunction. Also, we can see Venus, Chiron, everybody in Aries, right? So it's saying us as a humanity are going in a new direction, right? Chiron over there is in a third decan, Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter newly direct in Cancer, 15 degrees, so that's a Scorpio decan. So it's saying that we are learning to remember who we really are, the true origin, Pluto, Aquarius, you cosmic, you are not from Earth. I am not from Earth. None of us are from Earth, right? We are currently on Earth. We've been here many times before, many of us, but we are not from here, right? So Pluto in this Aquarius 4-degree Cancer, right? Cancer degree is saying, remember beyond the labels, remember between the human heritage. And also the history is very questionable. Me and Aaron, we had this conversation many times. I don't believe anything I heard about anything that is past the oldest person alive on this planet now and what they remember. Because the stories we were being told are so easily written, and they have been many times. So I don't believe shit about the history of human collective from the books we were being learning, because these are from human, these are from men who was being paid by someone to write that. So I don't believe any history about humanity past the age of the oldest person on this planet, right? So that's just my personal approach to history. I'm not saying I'm correct, but I believe in our ancient history and our cosmic history, like not even a history, but origin, right? So with this Jupiter there making this trine to this technically still North Node, Mercury, Mars, Pallas, which is the wisdom, right? Pallas Athena, is making this trine, which is saying now, going forward, March 15th, going forward March 10th, when Mercury stationed direct, throughout this process of Jupiter station in direct, throughout this process of Jupiter retrograde as of 11/11/2025, we have the opportunity to start remembering, and we remember through the emotion. This doesn't feel right. Not in my name. This doesn't feel right to me. This is not who. Like, how many people will say, I don't want this person in a politics represent me, or like even Aaron said that, like, since when the politicians or the government of a country represents people of the country? Like, how many times, this person is someone completely different to you?
They represent predicaments, not people. And the people are trapped in the predicaments, which are Hegelian dialectic, which are problem, reaction, solution oriented. And it's how you win any game. You have to create the rules of the game. You have to create the steps. You have to create the board. And to step out of that.
And you can't win the game you didn't create. So when even all of these people that are on the public stage, they are not in charge. Even the people behind them are not in charge. Even that small percentage of population that owns everything on this planet, they are not in charge. They are possessed by something completely different. Consciousness, entities, doesn't matter. So how far do you want to go with all of that? So now zoom back into your own personal experience. If you look at this world and what you can't control, now with Jupiter by that point direct, trining all of this, the conjunction, north node, everything there, you have to remember that everything that's going on in this world and in your life, it is not about who you are as a soul. It is not who you really are. It didn't begin or end with you. It hasn't begun and it will not end with you. You are just here on a borrowed time to play your role, which is changeable. So this is where we are at with the moon in Aquarius. It's changeable. You don't have to play the same role. You don't have to continue embodying these 4 roles of this, as Aaron mentioned, this martyr, victim, prosecutor, or the savior. You don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, imagine we're just cultivating that spirit, that psyche. Imagine your soul is tethered to life, to this being. In this being, there is a rising spirit. The spirit merged with this body and mind create an awareness. Emotions are immortal, but emotions aren't you. They flow through you. The emotions hold an awareness of pain, sorrow, joy, pleasure, all of these things, and things we haven't yet named, haven't quite understood. And in that energy, other things are swimming, other entities, spirits are swimming. So you are giving yourself to the demons, to the angels, to the spirits of reality. And in this, it's just like your body. You've got trillions of bacteria and different cells in your body. This isn't even you. This is like a collection of different energies. And it's chaos. And that's what chaos is. It's creativity. And so in this world, we have these people who play chaos agents. They're unpredictable because they're in positions of predictability, but they're doing logical moves. They're playing in reverse. They're doing things which make you question, how come I gave so much of myself to this when this isn't what I thought? It's the death of an absolution. It's where the parental figure steps out and you are given this authoritative role to self-authoritate. And in that process, if you don't know the language of yourself, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're not going to have sure footing. And that's what we're doing in this world now, especially with how much we need to buy into the culture, into the society. We have to give so much of our life force just to make it run. When it quits running, we don't know who we are because we've invested so much of ourselves into the role rather than a relation with ourselves and what we could be. So it's like learning this language of imagination. The mythologies of the past, the histories, these energies, they're true in the sense that they give you a feeling of the spirit, and you can feel what that is in the felt presence of losing your job, losing a loved one, having your freedoms taken away, or learning that your sense in simplicity and convenience has killed your actual spirit, your primal desire to live life and feel what it means to live. You give that away in relation because you're asked to play roles and be parts of this machine which doesn't honor you, and you have nothing left for yourself at the end of the day. So all this stuff happening is a chance for us to pull that back in and say, wait a minute, life can be beautiful. I can be beautiful. I don't need to look like the person on the front of a magazine or get approval from the masses. I just need to feel it within myself and bring that spirit out. And that's how we communicate. It's not through words, it's through our feelings. And if we're bound to the feelings external, of these situations which rise through the paradigm of this time, our cultural pressures and our societal expectations, then that's as deep as we can meet. So meet yourself deeper. That way you can meet other people deeper, beyond the facades.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this is a chart where Mercury is retrograde. So again, the realizations are going inwards. The realizations have to be realized within. And it's like the attractiveness between people is not necessarily based just on how they look, but how they feel being around those people. And that is determined by your frequency. So it doesn't matter. And I'm sure many people experience it. Like even if you're around a beautiful person, but if they are not a nice person, if they're horrible, or if they, don't treat you well and stuff, then eventually you see beyond the facade of their looks, of how they look. You don't even see the pretty face or the perfect body or whatever, because of how they make you feel. You see the the vibrational misalignment between what is perceived and how it makes you feel, and that's pretty much the reality we are perceiving at the moment. It is made to look beautiful, like how especially people in US, like everybody look at USA and they think like people there are living the dream. They have everything to their disposal, all the conveniences, easy access to everything. But how many people in the US actually feel rich, or they feel free? Like they're constantly hustling because the cost of living is so crazy, like literally absolutely crazy. Unfortunately, the rest of the world is slowly but surely catching up. But majority of people in this world, in this land of dreams, are slaves in their own life. They're slaves because in order to uphold that standard of living in a country which has such a high price tags on everything, you have to sell more than just your time. You have to sell your soul. So that's what I mean. On a surface, people look at countries like America, UK, Canada, whatever, they look at it and they think like it's this perfect place, right? This golden opportunity for happiness. And I'm not saying it isn't, but I'm saying that at what cost, like that nothing really is what it looks. Even people looking at my life, they think, oh, easy for you, you just travel the world, you're living in all these beautiful countries, blah, 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 whatever, doing what you love. Nobody really knows what's going on in my life. Nobody apart from Aaron, because he has to be witness to it at the moment. But nobody really knows anything about anything, right? So everything is just hypothetical. It's just assumption, right? The Jupiter, the stories that we create in our mind based on what we perceive. And, that's why even like I mentioned before, like even what we think we remember is hardly ever the truth. Because we remember it from the level of consciousness we have now, not the level of consciousness we were when it happened. Mm-hmm. So this is where the reality that we are really living and experiencing is much more fluid and much less static or solid. It has much less form than you think it has. So that's why with all of these astrology and everything that's going on energetically in the world, what you're perceiving is not really what's happening, and it is not like there is so much illusion and the Maya and smoke and mirror that nothing really is what it looks like. Nothing really is what it looks like. So the question is not what is the truth. The question is what is your truth, and what is the story you want to live in, and what role do you want to play. So the world will always be whatever the world is, and it will do what it does, because many of these things that are happening are collective contracts, and they are not in my or your control. We all agreed to things before we came here, and now they're just playing out, right? So that's what I mean. So the question is not what is the truth and what is really happening. Is this true? Is this true? What is this truth? It doesn't matter. It actually is irrelevant what is the truth.
Yeah, you said, earlier, and that was well said, but you mentioned, know thyself, but it's like mythologize yourself. Know that you're more than you can know about yourself. Create something of a new mythology. Bring a dream into existence through being different. Don't try when you feel that you're challenged by the limitations of your values or your knowledge or your experiences. that's where you step into the fire to challenge what that is and say, let me go beyond my limitations. I know that this reality isn't as it seems, and it never has been. How can I be open to that? How can I bring my mind into awareness that I actually am channeling spirit? I'm actually in tune with reality, with nature, with the cosmos. How do you embody what that is? And I feel that's what we're coming into with this 420 Mercury Mars conjunction at 8 degrees Aries. And that is what we will realize with Venus and Mercury in Scorpio when we come through that new moon in Libra. But in this chart, you can see the stellium. It's a crazy stellium in Aries. Whoever's born on this day is going to be quite a force. And
For sure.
we can see, you've got Pluto conjunct Juno. This is the alchemical wedding, sextiling, all this in Aries. You've got that in conjunction with the South Node in Virgo, in conjunct this Mercury Mars conjunction and Pluto. So there's a yod happening here. And in the middle is that focus point. Where do you go with it? What's that north node? The Pisces energy. In here, it's in the Venusian degrees according to Ptolemy. That's that outer wheel I have set up. So it's like, what is the value? What could life be? Who could you be? How do you question or challenge your own authority and embrace this changing world consciously? Find the language, the spiritual language, the physical language. Create the mental constructs which build upon that feeling. Don't just limit yourself to the stories and the narratives and the understandings of the past or of the others, but embrace choice. Embrace your life as a creative cosmic being and try and, you can't lead anyone. You can barely lead yourself, but you can show your expression of authenticity and live the fool. And that's what I feel this whole chart here is asking us, encouraging us to be brave in our ignorance and live the life of the fool and meet reality, meet existence with that spirit and allow it to shape itself around this sense of who we are, individually and collectively.
Absolutely. I really feel that there is just so much to be said. And as you can see, there is that Uranus on that analytic 29 degree again. It will be moving back into the sign of Gemini 5 days later on April 25th. It's obviously coming into the conjunction with Venus. I think that's happening like 2 days later on April 22nd or 23rd, and then Venus will move into the sign of Gemini, and Uranus slowly, shortly after, will follow and move into the sign of Gemini. So this is where there is an unlimited amount of options and possibilities waiting to be manifest. But what choices, again, we make, what direction we choose, depends on the level that you know yourself. And not really know yourself as the history or as what you've gone through in this life, but remembering who you really are. So that's why, like, with the in conjunction to the South Node, to me, it's like, yes, this life and everything that you know about this world are here just to give you an information based on which you can then make a different choice if you wish to. It's that in conjunction, one side is always the Virgo, the other side is always the Scorpio. So it's saying, yes, you have to go through life to realize, to learn, and then you can make an adjustments. And then you will have to let go of something in order for something else to be able to come. And that is the choice. What am I releasing in order to welcome something else into my life? And that is the Aries energy, like stepping into this new cycle, being the fool, coming into this unknown, but that requires to let go of everything that is not in alignment with that. So everything that feels that, okay, that this version of me that is attached to this trauma, that believes this, that reacts to things this way, like this addiction to drama, politics, and this constant stuff that's, this constant chaos that's going on there. this version of yourself is not in alignment with that version of yourself that you say you want to be, that version of me that just wants to be at peace and harmony and be in that 0 point of creativity and tap into the quantum field to bring that which is desired into reality. That version of me and the other one, they are not aligned. So in order for me to allow myself to become this future me, which I'm desiring to become, I need to let go to attachment of what has been. Yes, I'll have the memory of that, the nostalgia of this once has been me, and gratitude, because if it wasn't me, if I didn't go through everything I've gone through, I wouldn't be where I'm now, and I'm grateful for that. But I don't owe I owe it to my future self that I will not remain in the same place. So that in a sense, to me, the in conjunction from the Pluto to the South Node and everything in Aries to the South Node in Virgo on that 7th degree, which we know is a very spiritual and mystical number, the number 7, it's saying that in order to go where you haven't been, you had to let go of who you were.
Yeah, and that future self, don't think of it just as this body, this here now consciousness. I think of it as the immortality of consciousness itself, your soul incarnate. And if you look back in life, that's how it always is. You're always becoming the next version of yourself. Whether you can accept it or not, that is the aperture of your self-love, how much you can compassionate within yourself, how much value you can hold. Your mistakes are for reasons, just as your correct choices are for reasons. Nothing in this world is a coincidence. There's meaning for everything. The more you learn, the more limited you feel by a fatalistic sense of hubris, like you know the truth. But what you find is every question leads to new answers, so don't worry about it. Don't worry about the information. Don't worry about the truths holding you back. Be open to growing beyond them, and you always will. Your awareness will just start to find new layers, and if you have a sense of self in these new layers, you will be less likely to be possessed by these layers, by the flows. Think of swimming through the river of life. There's an undertow, there's an overtow, there are rocks, there are logs, there are whatever, you're always moving in this. So, what's right today might be wrong tomorrow and vice versa. Just try and get into the sense of yourself in this world growing, and your choices helping you to get there.
Yeah, it's funny that Pluto Juno is on 5 degrees again. Just like in the next chart, the one for October, we have that Mars on that 5 degree and Uranus on 5 degree. I think it was the last chart, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Final chart.
Oh, that's 2930. I think I'm pulling up the Venus chart.
No, I think it's the last chart. That one. Yeah.
That's the one. You got it.
Yeah, so there we got the 5 degrees again. The Pluto in the last conjunction of Mars and Mercury on April 20th, and this is the final conjunction between Venus and Mercury on that 8 degree of Scorpio. So this is where it began between Mars and Mercury in October of 2025. So it's interesting that here again we have the 5 degrees activated with the Uranus and Mars, and this is the chart we pretty much started with in conjunction with that Lilith on 2 degrees of Capricorn.
Yeah, so embody that difference. Exile yourself from who you thought you were to become who you might be, and you'll find unity with others, and that's how that new earth is created. It's a consciousness, and that's what we bring to this world. So bring a new consciousness. Don't be content with the stories as they are, and when the time comes, if you need to rise into your authenticity and do whatever it is in the physical world, you will do so with the spirit of knowing this, that you are not this, you are in this, and you can be more than this.
Yeah, we're only here on borrowed time, and nobody knows how much time they have left, so like live every day like your last, as some people would say, not with fear, but with grace. And this is like how we're looking at this year. Like if there are certain things that like long distance travel or other things that might potentially be available for the final time for a long time, then what choices would you make? I'm not saying this is what's the truth, but if you looked at this year, the year that is of the transition from one thing to another, and knowing that no matter what it is, but there are certain things which just will not be available going forward because of these huge energy shifts that we are going to be experiencing this year, then not knowing what exactly will be impacted, what exactly it will be, how do I want to enjoy the right here, right now? Not knowing that, okay, well, maybe some of these things that I'm taking for granted today, maybe will not be available next year. So then, enjoying life, perceiving and experiencing life differently with that in mind, that, nothing is guaranteed.
Well said.
Okay, should we stop sharing the charts?
Yeah, I think so. I think we got enough charts in here. All right, let's do this. All right. Gotta love the mouse pad. Here we are.
They look a little bit like aliens.
That's that layered reality. You don't know what's actually in the energy. It's not just physical. So,
Yeah.
but I don't know. It's just think of like these times as being seasonal cycles. Okay, if it's the middle of winter, you might not be able to enjoy the beach if you live in the northern hemisphere, particularly up north. Just like, when you get to the beach in the southern hemisphere where it's nice, like it is here in Mexico, the sun might be strong at midday, so you might need to be in the shade. There are better times. So just act in accordance with the sense of your emerging self, but also do take note of the changing times and what's happening in the world. Know that it is a symbol. It's a symbolic gesture. It's letting you know what's happening right here, right now, and where it's leading. And you can make the choices to help you live your best life in that energy.
Right. I feel that we've said enough. So we'll leave it at here because so much information and there's so much astrology going on, as I said, that it's fairly overwhelming. But keep in mind, with Neptune moving into Aries and then soon to be followed by Saturn next month and the eclipses and everything else that will follow, and being in the final 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks of the snake, the energy will change. So like for some people like myself, for example, I feel like we are waiting for something, like we are on a hold or on a pause waiting for something. And in a sense, wherever you are and whatever is going on in your life, it is going to change. So, so in some way, if you feel that things are not happening, things are too slow, then perhaps enjoy the slowness because things are going to change. They're going to speed up, especially once we enter into the fire horse and all this masculine energy will take over the feminine with the Aries and Gemini, replacing the Pisces and Taurus. So, just be here now.
Well said. All right, with that said, thanks for watching, listening, and being.
And stay tuned for our next video for our new channel, Sunlight Soul, where we pull in Oracle and Tarot cards, and we'll be doing so for the full moon in Leo next week. So Stay tuned.
All right, take care, everyone.
Bye.